Honorable sisters and brothers, per standard, this midweek happy hour, I briefly review the previous divine miracle proof by Jesus Christ. And that was, he wanted to emphasize the tremendous of civil authority and divine authority towards judgment. And so there's the coin in the fish's mouth. Now, what Jesus Christ proved is that no matter who you are on earth, God has a divine judging power, and nobody can play God. Now, I want to begin by saying a humorous little story, and that is, this comedian had a chance to perform against some people who had authority influence. And he said, gee, I better be good. So he gets ready, and he's in front of the microphone, and the curtain opens, and especially who he's going to say his jokes to are real tough guys. And so his knees are kind of knocking. And he said, well, I don't know if this joke is going to be good enough. So he hesitated. And then one of the real authorities, tough guys in the front row, said, all right, funny man, say something funny. And he said, then I couldn't talk. So now, if you're an intellectual, and especially a challenging intellectual, there's where the audience might say, all right, intellectual, say something smart or intellectual. Well, in the discipline of theology, Jesus Christ preached, if you are a believer, you don't need a prepared speech. You just say the truth. Therefore, what authority do I have to be a preacher? I call myself preacher doc. What authority do I have? Well, Paul was a tax collector, mean and nasty, and persecuted Christians. Paul had a vision. And during the daytime, the sun is shining and daytime. And Christ, Jesus, said, Paul, why do you persecute those who believe me? And then Paul became not only a Christian, he became Saint Paul, who did more in developing Christianity than anyone, just about anyone. Now, Paul didn't go 4 years to a college or university, or 6 years or 7 years and get a PhD in theology or some other discipline. In one day, Paul became a preacher, and the best preacher, in my opinion. So, for years, as a believer and doing a little preaching, I forgot about it. But then it came to where when I was preaching, where somebody would ask me, well, did you ever have a vision? I would say no. And then I thought about it. Yeah, I did, but over 50% I don't believe. that I really had the vision. So I would say no and forget about it. But I can't say I didn't, because then I would be lying. Now, this is what occurred. Vision comes through a solid door. Takes a little time to form as a distinguished. And of course, I can visualize it now. And the vision is not solid, but I can't see through it. And the vision acknowledges that I'm a believer and then says my name. Now I begin to doubt. I think there's no way that Jesus Christ Jesus, is going to come down to earth and knows who I am and is going to mention my name. So I said, well, I kept checking to see if I was awake. And from what I was checking, I think I was awake. Now I think it was more a dream than being awake. So I said, well, I'm going to get up and touch this vision. And as I was getting up, disappeared. Now, that's what occurred. In my opinion, more than 50%, I think. They say in dreams, you might dream about what you were thinking about before you went to sleep. And you usually dream just before you wake up. So you could be dreaming and starting to wake up, or you could be waking up and still not really awake. So that's, what authority do I have? The authority of Paul. He says, I'm going to start preaching that Christ Jesus is the truth. You understand? I don't need any university or any high person in any religion to ask me or try to tell me I can't preach. I'll say, put your proof of what you preach where your mouth is, because I'll put my proof where I preach. Now, I've been forced to delve into other disciplines. And then I wanted to. It was a challenge. Now my greatest challenge is the discipline of theology, study all beliefs. The big three critical questions and answers. How did we get here? I say by divine creative power. Why are we here? Well, we're here. There's a saying, we're here because we're here. We have to acknowledge divine judgment and salvation. You obtain salvation anytime, anywhere, anyhow, instantaneously. Absolutely. You don't need a preacher or anybody. Be just between you and divine God, and nobody can play God. Absolutely. What's best to do? Now you take in the entire realm, the spectrum of theology, science, philosophy, social science. Now, it's a fact. A person, and I'm human, no more or less than any other human, they have human rights. And then groups have their rights, and nations have their rights. When I grew up, I looked at the flag and said, you know, Abraham Lincoln became president. Maybe anybody could. Italian descent man, Catholic. The only way I could do it is by having a public debate on the presidential level. Lincoln had it at the senatorial level. Do you understand? I put forward in the U.S.A. a renaissance in the discipline of political science. Absolutely. In public debates, especially with television. You understand? You put this on a boisterous analyzer, take a polygraph test. I say the absolute truth. So now, I say, I looked at that flag and I did as much as anybody in the history of the U.S. More good and more feels, in my opinion, any man in the history of the U.S. Put what I achieved next to anybody. If I'm doing better, why not me? Hey, you won't live. You got to be one of the two that they allow. But I was with those who had the power. Do you understand? Now, I was then double-crossed by this liar, robber, grand theft artist, especially my science and inventions, immoral, homosexual, pedophile, women hater, murderer, assassin. JFK, J. Edgar Hoover was the power behind having him assassinated, is polite word for murder, so that JFK was going to replace him after he was elected. I was there in Washington, D.C., going to senators and representatives demanding that Hoover be investigated for experimenting my brother to death. Absolute true fact. Yet nobody knows me, and it's all kind of secretive. So then in this U.S.A., who really is running, what is the power? And is God really blessing this Hoover-istic hypocrisy? Do you understand? The USA Today is a J. Edgar Hoover hypocrisy. They have his name on a big building where they have the most powerful investigators that can say and do anything they want to. And if you don't do it and you want to investigate, you have to call them to investigate themselves. They have a museum for that pedophile, for young boys especially, going and idolize that pedophile. I was watching Hoover give a lecture to Boy Scouts, and I said, the Boy Scouts? And they bamboozled me and made sure I didn't see any more of that. Absolutely true fact. I tried to save JFK's life because that's the way Hoover operated. I had studied Hoover until they say, well, the FBI will study you so they can beat you. Well, I studied Hoover, and Hoover was an evil homosexual, murderous, assassin, experimented Americans to death. Absolute true fact. So now, you look at the fact that this Hoover is idolized. Well, now they get to find out what this Hoover really was. I survived accidents by a split second. You better believe I am who I say I am, because I can prove it. Polygraph, lie detector test, boisterous analyzer. I used to call Washington, D.C. and say, look, you can tell by my voice that Hoover has to be replaced. Not for just murdering and experimenting my brother to death, others, including at least one woman, that they let me see that I think I can prove. Yes, that woman hater, that pedophile. So they say, God bless America. I don't think God will bless a Hoover-istic hypocrisy. Sisters and brothers, that's the truth.